Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss on hooks in React. So before, we have already made a small video to introduce you to the concept of hooks in functional component. But this video will actually help you to understand what are hooks, why they are important, what problems do they solve, and what are the advantages of using hooks in React. Not only that, you will be also familiarized with the rules for writing good hooks. So without any delay, let's get started. So before we discuss about hooks, let's discuss what are functions. So functions are common in any sort of programming language. Functions are basically a block of code which are written only once and can be called many times in the main code to perform certain tasks. So as we are not repeating the same code again and again, it adheres to our do not repeat principle. This increases code reusability. Thus, React's components are usable as well. So basically what happens in any programming language, you have a concept of functions. Functions basically help you to write a piece of code and call it from anywhere within the other parts of the code. You need not to write a certain piece of code again and again. You can just write them once in a separate block and you can call that block from the other parts wherever required. Okay? Now let's discuss what are hooks actually in React. React hooks are simple JavaScript functions that we can use to isolate the reusable part from a functional component. Hooks can be stateful and can manage side effects. React hooks are a new feature of React.js that makes it possible to use state and other React features without writing a class. They simply the way we use React.js by removing the need for class components and render methods and instead enable us to use functions as hooks. With React 16.8, hooks came into existence. So what happened? Previously, we used to have class components in React. They were object-oriented in nature and they had access to the local state variable, they had access to manage side effects, and they had a render method to render the JSX. In the other hand, when functional components were introduced, functional components were simply stateless. They didn't have any access to the local state variable or they could not hook into the lifecycle methods. But with the introduction of hooks in React 16.8, the benefits of class components were actually imbibed in the functional component. And thus, since then, we can use local state variable, manage side effects, and not only that, we can also hook into the React lifecycle methods. So if you are not sure what are lifecycle methods in React, please watch one of our previous videos where we have discussed about lifecycle methods in React in detail. So what problems did hooks solve? Before the introduction of hooks in React 16.8, class components were used to make stateful components and function components were used to make stateless components. Stateful component means the components could maintain a local state apart from the global application state. On the other hand, stateless components are basically pure functions which for same input produces the same output. Okay? But after the introduction of hooks, developers could use state and separate the logic for maintenance of state and side effects from the main component in functional components, hence making them stateless, which further increases code reusability. Besides this, they help the developers to hook into React state and lifecycle features from functional components. Okay? So as now we have learned what are functions, what are hooks, and what problems did hooks solve. Now let's discuss about the design pattern in React and how hooks fit into this scenario. Design patterns in React are basically templates and best practices to quickly create the structure for our production grade application. These design patterns not only enable developers to think more abstractly while creating applications but also helps them to develop large production grade application by modularizing the components and share the logic between them. This also increases reusability. Okay? In React, there are two different types of components, namely class components and function component. Functional component in React are simply JavaScript or TypeScript functions which are used to render UI on the web browser. But functional component didn't contain local state. Class component, on the other hand, includes features like lifecycle hooks, local state. The class components also follow an object-oriented approach. To mitigate these issues and use all the beneficial features of class components in functional components, hooks were introduced. Though there are many inbuilt hooks available, developers still can create custom hooks which helps them to extract the component's logic and create separate usable functions. So basically, as I have already said previously, functional components used to be absolutely stateless. They neither could access the local state variable nor could manage side effects. Not only that, functional components also didn't have access to hook into the React lifecycle methods. So mostly class components were used in majority of the cases. But when hooks were introduced, which are basically simple functions to handle certain tasks and make your component reusable, so what happened? With the introduction of hooks and its growth, functional components started being used more and more rather than class components. And there are certain reasons why that happened. Function components were not only easier to write and implement, but they had a lot of less boilerplate code. And apart from that, as any developer from any programming language are very much familiar with functions, so they became slightly biased toward functional component. Not only this, but functional components are also easier to test and maintain. Okay, and that's why in the light of design pattern in React, hooks became a perfect fit. Now, let's discuss about advantages of hooks in React. Hooks helps developers to write concise, cleaner and readable code. Hooks enables us to extract components logic and create separate functions. Hooks increases reusability of React's code. Hooks don't create additional elements in DOM. Hooks bring in the benefits of class components in functional components without introducing complexity. Okay, so let's go through this point one by one and discuss what I am talking about. So in the first point, I have said hooks they help developers to write concise, cleaner and readable code. This is so because using hooks you can actually separate the component logic to the logic of the side effects. You can isolate the logic for calling an API for handling local state variable in another separate functions, thus making your functional components concise, cleaner and perfectly readable by other developers. In the next point I have said, hooks enable us to extract components logic and create separate functions. This basically relates to the first point, because as you are separating the logic for the component from the logic of the side effects, we could maintain a partition and make components reusable. Thirdly, hooks increases reusability of React's code. So this also linked with the second point. So once you have separated the different logics, you can reuse both of them. Fourth point, hooks don't create additional elements in DOM. So basically, as I have already said, hooks are simple JavaScript or TypeScript functions. They don't have any JSX which they return. So they don't occupy any space in DOM. In the last point I have said, hooks bring in the benefits of class components in functional components. And this point we have already discussed multiple times. Lastly, we come to a point where we are going to discuss about writing hooks in React. So the hooks are simple functions, but you cannot write them without following some proper design pattern. The first point, hooks are always invoked from the top level. Never call hooks inside loops, conditions or nested functions. Second point, hooks should always be used with functional components. Please make a note of this here. Hooks can never be used with class components because class components already have this feature which hooks provide to the functional components. Hooks don't work within pure JavaScript functions. The last but not the least, built-in hooks can be invoked from within the custom hooks in React. So this is also one more important point which you need to remember. So in cases where you require one hook, you can create a custom hook yourself, and within that custom hook, you can make use of built-in hooks as well. React absolutely allows this. Okay? So I hope you like this video. In case you like it, feel free to hit the like button and please subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring more videos in the future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. So thank you for now. See you in the next video. Bye.